Now I'd like to introduce you to our speakers today. Our first speaker is Eric Schockfe, who is the Lester Levi Carter Professor and Department Chair of Chemical Engineering at Stanford University. He earned a BSc summa cum laude from Princeton University and an MS and PhD from Stanford University, all in chemical engineering. He joined the Stanford Chemical Engineering faculty in early 1990, and in 2001 he received a dual appointment and became Professor of Mechanical Engineering. He is most recently a faculty member in the Institute of Computational and Mathematical Engineering at Stanford. He has authored or co-authored over 180 publications and has been an associate editor of the Physics of Fluids since 2006. Schockfe has been awarded the APS Francois and Frankel Award, the NSF Presidential Young Investigator Award, the David and Lucille Packard Fellowship in Science and Engineering, among many others. He is a fellow of the American Physical Society and a member of the National Academy of Engineering. Lisa Wang is a senior lecturer in the Chemical Engineering Department and is co-academic director of the Stanford Chemical Engineering online master's degree program. She received her BS in Chemical Engineering from MIT and her MS and PhD in Chemical Engineering from Stanford, working with the Kurt Frank Group on polymer thin films and interfaces. She has served as a lecturer consultant for the Office of the Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning and is the faculty director of TA training for the Chemical Engineering Department. She has been teaching in the department since 2006. Elizabeth Satley is an assistant professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering at Stanford and a Stanford ChemAge faculty fellow. She also serves as an honorary adjunct staff scientist at the Carnegie Institution of Science. Dr. Satley completed her graduate training at Boston College in organic chemistry and her postdoctoral studies in biochemistry at Harvard Medical School, where she worked on natural product biosynthesis in bacteria. Inspired by human reliance on plants and plant-derived molecules for food and medicine, the Satley Laboratory is focused on the discovery and engineering of plant metabolic pathways to make molecules that can enhance human and plant health. Work in the Satley Lab has been recognized by an NIH New Innovator Award, a DOE Early Career Award, an HHMI Simons Faculty Scholar Award, and an AAAS Mason Award for Women in the Chemical Sciences. And finally, Alexander Dunn is an associate professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering at Stanford University. His research focuses on understanding how living cells sense mechanical stimuli, with particular interest in stem cell biology and tissue engineering. Dr. Dunn worked as a postdoctoral scholar with James Spudich in the Department of Biochemistry at the Stanford University School of Medicine. He received his PhD at the California Institute of Technology under the direction of Harry Gray, where his work focused on understanding the catalytic mechanism selective CH bond oxidation by cytochrome P450 enzymes. His work has been recognized with numerous awards, including the Hertz Fellowship, Jane Coffin Childs Postdoctoral Fellowship, the Burroughs Wellcome Career Award at the Scientific Interface, and NIH Director's New Innovator Award. So an amazing panel that we have today. So now I'd like to start by turning the floor over to Eric and Lisa.
Okay. All right. Today, we're here to discuss the introduction of a new online master's degree in chemical engineering. And I would like to give you some history and perspective on how that came about in our department. We've had a residential master's for many years now, even near the beginning of the department. Our department is somewhere around 50 plus years old. But we all thought that we were actually missing an audience with our master's program, particularly the people who were professionals working at companies that wanted to get advanced education, but essentially were working full-time jobs. So we wanted to open the access to this, and we now have a faculty that's of that size that we can actually do such a thing. So this is the introduction of a new program. We're targeting a new audience. We have our own new admissions program for that degree, and we'd like to talk to you about some of the specifics so that we encourage you, if you have this interest, to apply to our online master's degree program now through March 19th for this go-round. Ultimately, our program was structured with these two goals in mind: to provide greater access, as I mentioned, to a population perhaps we weren't reaching for before. And also, Stanford is an amazing place where you can structure a degree, and we're giving you the flexibility to structure that degree in a way that combines a very internationally top-ranked chemical engineering institution with the wide range of engineering coursework that's offered at Stanford. So you can structure a program within your interest set, with an interest set that perhaps has interests outside chemical engineering. such as entrepreneurship, artificial intelligence, biological studies, etc., and still obtain a very first-rank online master's program. We structured it to accomplish these goals in the following way. We're going to ask you to complete 45 academic units, all offered via the online learning, 27 units in chemical engineering, 8 graduate level courses, and 1 engineering seminar. And those courses will have in them not just you folks, the online master's folks, but also our PhD students, our residential masters, etc. And these will be taught by our regular faculty, all of them on a regular basis. Beyond that, then, we add the flexibility that you can, as I said, structure the program so you can look at other interests that you might have that would be supplementary to your interest in chemical engineering. And that means that you can take 18 units in engineering, science, or math electives, 200 level classes or above, for any of the online offerings that are presently offered within Stanford. Lisa, who's the director of the program, and myself are going to review your program sheets. And particularly, we're going to look at programs which have 3 or 4 electives in a single topical area. Again, that's part of our program. We want people to have to combine the chemical engineering with an area that they are interested in, and then 2 or 3 other electives that might be things that they've never taken before that they have just an interest in. Again, it's a 45-unit program, 27 units in chemical engineering, and 18 units in engineering, science, or math electives. I'm now going to hand it over to Lisa, and she's going to tell you a little bit more detail about the program that we've structured.
Great, thanks, Eric. So the way our program is structured is that we ask you to take 4 core chemical engineering courses. These are 300 level courses that you can see below. We are offering 5 of our core courses online. As you can see here, you would choose 4. And then we'd also have you choose 4 additional electives within the chemical engineering graduate programs that we offer online. And these range from, anything from heterogeneous catalysis to entrepreneurship in the engineering and sciences. So even within the chemical engineering requirements, you do have some breadth in terms of the electives. And we have, as you can see from our core courses, we really emphasize a molecular engineering perspective. And you will see this throughout all of your coursework in the department. Now, regarding your elective topical areas or areas of focus, we're really fortunate that Stanford has a wealth of online graduate engineering courses that are offered online every quarter. And we encourage you to take advantage of this. So, think about what would be most beneficial for you and your goals for obtaining this degree. You might have a concentration in entrepreneurship, applied math, modeling, optimization, etc. This is really where you get to tailor the program to meet your needs. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Let me say just a little bit about that. As Lisa's going to show you now on the website for the program, we have taken the time to actually write down subgroups of courses which fit underneath these areas which you might be interested in. And so therefore we encourage you to go to the website, to go to VPTL's description of these courses so that you get an idea as to what your program would look like and how it would fit your interests.
Great. So what we're showing you here is just 2 of these sort of pre-selected courses that we thought would be of interest to folks, for example, who are interested in entrepreneurship. You can see that, in addition to the world-class chemical engineering coursework, we are surrounded by great colleagues who are discussing entrepreneurship from potentially a management science and engineering perspective, or you might be interested in learning about this from a civil and environmental engineering slant. Optimization and control. Again, you have great opportunities to take advantage of expertise in the Aeroastro department from, a double E lens, a management science and engineering. You get to craft and tailor your concentration from the perspective that you are particularly interested in.
So let's we're going to seed in some sense the questions with a couple that we imagine would be some of the most appropriate or interesting to you. So let's start this question about what is the time of completion. Again, this is in some sense self-paced. We imagine people taking 1 or 2 courses a quarter and then finishing the 45 units. If you do take 1 course a quarter, and you can do the math, you can complete this in about 3.5 years. But we imagine some people will take as much as 5 years to do it. Some people might have the time to do it in a shorter period of time. But again, it's self-paced, and that's part of the advantage of this program, that you can do it in some sense in your own time. The second question, I am interested in a PhD in chemical engineering. Is this program right for me? If you want to get a PhD in chemical engineering, you probably don't want to take this program. We have very few of our residential master students making the transition to the PhD program because, frankly, the requirements are very, very different. We've structured this program as a terminal online master's experience for professionals who want education in chemical engineering and then in other related fields. So the short answer is no. Of course, we will consider an application for a PhD in chemical engineering, but it's really not a prep for the PhD. It's a terminal program. And then the third question is, I may prefer to attend classes on campus. And so suppose you want to switch. In fact, suppose you want to switch either direction. We've structured the program such that they are very, very complementary. So this would be relatively simple. That is to say, if you're taking the online master's, you are satisfying residential master's requirements and therefore could make the switch. However, we would like to control the number of people that switch. So we will consider petitions for this switch and restrict the number per year. Lisa, did you have anything more?
No, I think that covers it, Eric. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. So now I'd like to present Alex Dunn, who's going to be our next speaker. I know Alex has a commitment after this, so I do want to encourage people that have questions during his presentation to submit them in the Q&A box so we can ask him before he has to leave. But fun fact about Alex, he recently submitted a paper to the journal Science about a special protein that gives a cell physical structure. That work can ultimately help us think about regenerative medicine and how we can engineer human stem cells to form tissues and organs to replace what's been lost to accident and disease. He's exploring some really interesting questions in his research. So it's my pleasure to hand off to Alex so he can talk about his work in his upcoming spring quarter course that you can take with him.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you all for coming to visit, if virtually, with us today. So I'll begin by just mentioning in a few minutes my, my research lab's interests. And that is really very simple. You and I and the mouse you see on your screen all began as a relatively undifferentiated mass of cells, and yet we grew into complex and beautiful organisms. And as an engineer, this provokes a very simple question. How did that happen? And how can we recapitulate that process in the lab in order to build new replacement tissues? So the goals of my lab are to understand how biology builds itself from molecules up, and importantly, to understand the physical rules by which cells work together to construct living tissues. So for example, in a story we published a few years ago, we performed simple experiments on zebrafish embryos. These are little fish just like you'd see in a pet store. We learned some simple rules about how the tissues arrange themselves, and we're now applying those rules to try to understand how groups of stem cells work together in the lab in order to build a complex tissue that could be used for regenerative medicine purposes. Now, as part of that study, we're really interested in the sensors and actuators inside every cell in your body. So you can think of these as nanometer-sized strain gauges or even muscles, but scaled down to the nanometer length scale. Importantly, these molecular assemblies actually perform both mechanical functions and also compute information. It's something I would love to talk about with you at greater length. Now, in one such study, we used advanced light imaging to try to understand how living cells move through solid tissues and how they remodel their physical surroundings. And what we found is that these cells are powered by contractile struts, as you see in this movie, where we use advanced image processing to track the movement of individual protein complexes within a living cell. And one way to think about it is that these cells, which happen to be the cells that repair wounds, for instance, in your skin, actually use the same design principles in order to generate force and motion as this sort of creepy looking cheetah robot that was created a few years ago by Boston Dynamics. Now, we are of course here to talk about the classes that I teach. There are two classes. If time allows, I'll discuss both of them. The first, which I'm teaching next quarter, is called Chemical Kinetics and Reaction Engineering. And I tell stories in that class about each of the images you see on the screen. Now here's the syllabus. And our approach to this topic is a little bit different in this department than in most other departments. And it focuses very much on the fundamentals that drive chemical reactivity. So we start with transition state theory, the question of how reactions occur. And as I'll show you on the next slide, we also think about the deep connections between the kinetics of chemical reactions and basic statistical physics. We then move on to understanding the basic rules that underlie a modern and predictive understanding of heterogeneous catalysis and explore their deep connections with the same rules that control how biological enzymes work. We then finish with an introduction to systems biology and systems of coupled reactions and transport. Now, just as a practical example, here's the Monsanto process, which is used in an industrial scale to produce acetic acid, usually with an, if my memory serves, an iridium rather than rhodium-based catalyst. Now, in this laboratory study, it was discovered that despite the presence of 8 species and corresponding number of reactions, the overall rate was dictated by the concentrations of only 2 species. Using very simple principles, it's possible to determine why that is and use that information to optimize reactivity. As I mentioned earlier, there are really only a few physical rules that govern chemical kinetics. One of them is very simple statistics of improbable events. So in the first lecture of the course, I'll explain to you why the injuries to soldiers due to poorly behaved horses in the Prussian army actually led to the fundamental mathematical understanding that drives our understanding of chemical reactions. So for example, unlike in most courses on this topic, we'll actually perform stochastic reactions that give you insight into chemical reactivity and allow you to model systems with small number of components, as would be common, for instance, in some diagnostics applications. The second topic in this course is why do reactions happen and what makes them fast or slow? So here is just an example slide showing one fundamental result in the field, transition state theory, that relates the rate of a reaction to a ratio of partition coefficients, Q double dagger and QA. This provides deep and beautiful connections between our understanding of statistical mechanics and of chemical reactivity. As the course progresses, we move on to more modern topics. I'm particularly enthusiastic about de novo design of functional enzymes for both laboratory and industrial application. And this is a topic that I think will have enormous importance in the coming years. Now, that's the most relevant and immediate information. I should mention that I also teach a second online course on biochemistry that's quite complementary to the advanced topics taught by my colleague, Professor Satley. And just like in kinetics, I teach that course around stories involving all of the things you see on your screen there. Now, why study metabolism, which is really the basic concept in this course, is human metabolism. Well, human disease is one very important and obvious application. Perhaps slightly less obvious, but still pretty immediate, is the connection to synthetic biology. The rules you'll learn in this class will allow you to construct in a rational way complex molecules like the anti-malarial artemisinin. And then finally, this course provides foundational knowledge for understanding how the beautiful natural world around us works. Now, the underlying insight in this course is how to go from complex information like this metabolic network I'm showing here to fundamental insight. In other words, how to pack detail into your head in a way that makes sense and that allows you to make practical decisions in the future. All right, that's all of my questions. That's all of my material. I can answer a few questions if you're interested.
We did have a question come in for you, Alex. So someone asked, within your course, do you explore how small chemical changes impact iPSCs to form teratomas or how other cell culture errors develop?
Yes, indeed we do. So for those of you who may not know those acronyms, that's an induced pluripotent stem cell, which is a powerful substrate for tissue engineering. We're especially interested in how the interplay between mechanical cues like tissue geometry or mechanical forces within the tissue combine with the biochemical signals that a cell receives in order to tell the cell live, die, divide, differentiate, or stay the same. And these are the rules that construct us and that I think will be incredibly important to understand for tissue engineering. All right.
Yeah. Great. I don't see any other questions coming through quite yet. So if anyone has any other questions for Alex, feel free to put them through. But if we don't get a chance to follow up, as I know he needs to go to his other commitment, we'll certainly do some follow-up. So thank you so much, Alex, for taking the time today to speak.
My pleasure, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, so now I'm going to move on to our next speaker. I'd like to hand it over to Beth. A fun fact about Beth, she was recently named as one of the 47 investigators on the Chan Zuckerberg BioHub, where she will be focusing on merging engineering and detailed knowledge of plant biochemical pathways to enhance human health. This BioHub initiative will invest more than $50 million to support people like Beth in her life science research. So it's an exciting opportunity to take her course and to learn from her. So now I'll hand it over to her. Thanks, Beth.
Great. Thanks very much, Stephanie, for the introduction. I want to start by actually introducing my lab and my broader research program. We're a collection of engineers and scientists who are interested in plants as plants. And what I mean by that is the ability of green plants to produce molecules at scale that are critical for life as we know it. And so we're fascinated by the amazing capacity of plants to take the world's simplest building block, carbon dioxide, and produce so many molecules that are important to us. For example, the food we eat, these processes lead to the air we breathe, biofuels we're considering for renewable energy, as well as numerous molecules that are either used in the clinic or part of our diet that influence our health. And so plants are already incredibly productive, but we realize that modern tools in genetic engineering, which allow us to make multiple simultaneous changes in a complex organism's genome, opens the door for new possibilities. And so I want to just introduce 3 grand challenges that motivate the research in my lab, and as I'll tell you, also have motivated some of the concepts that I go over in the course I teach, Biochemical Engineering. So these challenges have to do with altering the metabolism of plants using these engineering tools. So for example, if we have molecules from plants that we use in the clinic, it's critical to know that many of these compounds are produced by plants that are difficult to cultivate or by plant cell culture, which can be an inefficient source of these molecules. And so we'd like to use engineered metabolism or engineered biosynthesis to come up with a new way to manufacture these particular compounds. We're also interested in how the chemistry of plants influences plant fitness, and furthermore, how it could be engineered to enhance plant fitness. So small molecules plants produce are critical for allowing plants to obtain the nutrients they need to grow and prevent disease and grow in less desirable areas, for example, high salinity or drought. And finally, another area in my lab that has to do with chemistry of plants and human health has to do with optimizing nutrition in our diet. So really using a metabolic engineering approach to make plants healthier. And so again, these grand challenges motivate the work in my group and also how I approach ChemEng 355 biochemical engineering. So in this course, as I'll tell you, my goal is to really present the tools and concepts that are required to really build any engineered biological system. So as I have shown in the circle, that could be an engineered cell, it could be an engineered higher organism such as a plant, where we're going to modify the machinery from DNA to RNA to protein to either product or function to obtain new chemical functionality. And so some of these things you could think about are maybe ones you've heard before. For example, the production of antibiotics in cells or the production of therapeutic proteins. But there are a lot of new possibilities as well. How could we engineer cells to produce fuels or plastics or even small molecules that you don't even find in nature? On the function side, again, we can think about using cells as essentially tools and machines for information storage, cell-based therapies, and even on the whole organism scale again. For example, non-browning apples is a recent example from the agriculture side. And so within these challenges, comes the framework for the course objectives. And so my goal is not to have a collection of students with an expansive knowledge of biology, but to deliver in this course the basic concepts and the language of biochemical engineering that would allow you to build any engineered system. And so at the end of the course, once you finish, my objective is that any new process that you hear about, either in the news or a colleague has worked on or something that's being developed at a company, you understand each of the components required to build that system from scratch using quantitative principles. I'd also like to convey, especially towards the second half of the course, ideas about what are the limits of biochemical engineering? What new tools might we need to develop? And what's on the horizon? And what are some of the frontiers and challenges in this field? And so the course is really organized into two parts. In the beginning, we go through some of the background biology that builds on much of the things that Alex, my colleague, talked about in terms of fundamentals of biological systems. What aspects of a cell do you need to understand in order to be able to engineer the chemistry of a cell? We do this using a quantitative approach. For example, rates in biological systems and rates of central dogma, so that we can really think about how to apply process and engineering controls to get the output that we're interested in. In the second half of the course, once we have this understanding, starting from a piece of DNA, going to a cell and an organism level, what are some of the applications? So how might we generate proteins with new function or metabolic pathways with a different output? And then how do we think about scaling up and process considerations for these applications? And so I want to just close with one example from my lab, which is a complex process and really a challenge that the principles that you learn in Chemical Engineering 355 could help you address. So one of the things that we were really interested in is an anti-cancer agent, etoposide, that's used in many clinically applied chemotherapeutics. So this is a molecule that's currently produced from a plant, a medicinal plant that's very difficult to cultivate. And in fact, that there's often limiting sources of this particular molecule. So in recent years, shortages have been reported by the FDA, in part because we have no good way of manufacturing this drug beyond isolation from the medicinal plant. And so the challenge for us is, could we rebuild biology? Could we take that metabolic pathway from this medicinal plant and engineer it as a way to produce this compound? And so what we needed to do was identify genes. We needed a source for each of these pieces of DNA. We needed to control how they might be expressed in a chassis. And we needed to find ways to keep those genes in our chassis and get to the output of interest. And so we've been able to do this in my lab, take the genes from a medicinal plant and transfer them to a much easier to cultivate and grow plant, Nicotiana benthamiana, which is a wild relative of tobacco. So thinking back to a Biochemical Engineering 355, in that course, we'll learn about all the steps of a process, whether you want to take the genes from a medicinal plant and put them into a chassis like tobacco, or you want to build an engineered T cell or some other process in engineering.
Great. Thanks so much, Beth. So as a reminder, if you have questions for Beth, please submit them into the Q&A box. It's an amazing opportunity to ask her questions. If we don't see any at the moment, which I don't see any specific to Beth, we'll have some time at the end for the Q&A for her to answer. So please don't be shy about submitting those questions. So next, I want to talk a little bit about online learning at Stanford. So the online learning experience is the next best thing to being here on campus at Stanford. Faculty are giving lectures that we capture and post for our online students. They're held in special classrooms, so at the same time that they're lecturing to on-campus students, we are also capturing their lectures. There are features within the video player like bookmarking, creating important clips that you want to review later, and notes that you can add to lecture videos. And there are several ways to interact with the teaching team, such as office hours, forums, and project work. So here's a great example of what the video player looks like. You can see Alex Dunn is featured right there in his Biochemistry 2 class. As you can see on the bottom right, you can add bookmarks and clips by clicking on those icons and create notes. If you need to review a concept that Alex has explained, you can simply watch it again, which is really nice. And these lecture videos are archived and available to students throughout the quarter, so a great resource for those online learners. I want to talk a little bit about our enrollment. So the spring quarter enrollment period is open now through March 19th for the the master's degree program. So over a month still to take advantage of this deadline. Follow these steps, starting with the grad admissions link. Keep in mind the GRE is required, 3 letters of recommendation, a statement of purpose, and academic transcripts. If you aren't quite ready to apply to the master's degree program, but you want to get your feet wet by taking some graduate level courses for credit, you can start as a non-degree option student with the Stanford Center for Professional Development. The GRE and letters of rec are not required, as you can see, but transcripts are required. You start what we like to call NDO, an NDO application with us, and you can take courses for credit and apply up to 18 units towards the master's degree program should you get accepted. So that's really nice. So as we head into the end of our presentation, again, we're going to transition into the Q&A portion of the webinar. Please be sure to submit your questions into the Q&A box so we can take advantage of the time we have with these wonderful presenters today. As you submit those questions, I want to remind you here that the Chemical Engineering Department is currently taking applications for this exciting new online degree program. You can learn more by going to their chemical engineering website, and the application deadline is March 19th. As mentioned before, if you want to just get your feet wet by being a non-degree option student to start, we have 2 wonderful chemical engineering graduate certificates that you can start with. As mentioned before, up to 18 units can be applied to a master's degree program. This is our biotechnology graduate certificate that actually includes ChemEng 355 with Beth, so just so you're aware of that. We also have, as our next certificate, the Energy Engineering and Technologies graduate certificate that you can explore as well as you're ramping up to apply for the master's degree program. Information on both of these certificates and the courses that are involved can be found at scpd.stanford.edu. Again, I want to make mention of 2 amazing courses that Beth and Alex are teaching this upcoming spring quarter. Of course, that ChemEng 355 that Beth was talking about, Advanced Biochemical Engineering, and the ChemEng 320, Chemical Kinetics and Reaction Engineering. So those are going to be available for those who apply and are accepted into the master's degree program, and also if you choose to take it as a non-degree option student. And spring enrollment is also open until March 19th for both for the non-degree option students. Okay, so we're going to head into the Q&A. We already have some questions that have come up. So,
Can I say something or no?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Eric. Yes.
Let me just say, so you saw how the exciting, wonderful content of these courses, and we focused this webinar on 2 vignettes associated with courses that are actually available in the spring. But in fact, similar stories exist for all of our courses in energy, in catalysis, in solar cell science, etc. So it covers the broad range. And what we've tried to do is open this up to people that may not have the opportunity to be in residence at Stanford, but still have the opportunity to have this really exciting learning experience. That was the faculty's vision and goal in this, and we hope you take the chance to take this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah.
All right, so the first question that is posed to the group, Are students in the online master's program eligible to participate in the research labs of professors?
We don't have the original concept was that there would be a research component to it. Right now, we don't require it. I believe you could apply to do a research component of that. It's not required in the program right now, and we would consider that. But right now, it isn't part of the program. It might be in the future. Of course, that requires residents. Usually to do lab work, and so we were trying to divide those two. Our master students, the residential master students, typically do some aspect of research as part of their program.
Great. The next question we have is, how will lab activities or hands-on activities be handled with this online program?
Yeah, as I think I mentioned, there are no lab courses that are included right now in the curriculum. If there are lab modules that are part of the teaching, then they would be handled online. So you would see the lab module externally, but you wouldn't participate in the hands-on experience.
Okay, the next question is maybe not specific to the lab, but just in general, are there research opportunities for students in the online program?
Yeah, again, we have not required it in the program, but we would accept, you could ask to participate in research opportunities, and we would be willing to consider that, and the faculty would be, but we don't have any requirements for that. So in some sense, that would be in addition to the present requirements. Did you have anything to say about that, Lisa?
No, I mean, I think our faculty would be open to, interested students, just as they are welcome. Our residential master's students have access to the faculty to explore some options as well. So if this is a particularly strong interest, I'm sure, the student could engage with the faculty that they're interested in.
Yeah. Let's just be clear. We have students at all levels, undergraduate, masters, and visiting scholars participating in research activities, and actually undergraduates from all across the country and the world participating in research opportunities within our faculty's labs. And so that is definitely available to you on the online program. We didn't require it because it requires residents.
Okay, the next question is, and we may have answered this already, are online courses live or pre-recorded? I don't know if you guys have any pre-recorded flipped situations, but I think most of them are
Most of them are
recorded.
live and then recorded, if that's the thing. So as I think about it, there might be some, if the faculty's out of town, where he'll use some pre-recorded classes in those spots. But generally right now, they're live and recorded. Do you have any?
No, so most of if you're an online student, you will be watching the video content asynchronous from the actual class, the on-campus version of the class.
Yes. But they are live and recorded.
Someone has asked, I'm interested in polymers. I work in the plastics industry.
Yes.
What kind of courses are related to polymers, and are they available?
Yes, we have, let's see, online right now.
I don't believe we are in this academic year offering our polymers course online, but it is certainly something we could consider for the future. We also have a variety of material science courses that go into polymers, polymer physics, and polymer applications that might be of interest that are offered online.
We have 162 and 262, which will come back next year. It's taught this year, but not online.
Okay.
But it will come back next year, and we can have it taught online if there's interest. That would be a good thing to do.
Great.
It's been taught online in the past.
Yes.
Yes.
So another question that has come in, someone asked, I have a degree in industrial engineering. I'm currently working in adhesives industry, and my career path requires for me to strengthen my chemistry knowledge. Is this master's degree right for me?
It's pretty darn good for you, let's put it that way. There's a lot of chemistry and chemistry-related processing that is in this curriculum, much more so than on the physics side. So I would have to say yes.
Great. Someone asked, do I need to enroll in one of the graduate certificate programs, biotechnology or energy engineering, or can I take one or more individual courses related to my area of interest? And I can answer that question by saying, certainly people can take standalone courses. They don't need to enroll in the certificate program in order to take courses. Right. They just need to meet those prerequisites. But I don't know if you want to talk to, I know you're involved in developing those graduate
Yes.
certificates, what the benefits of taking those.
Right. So
would be.
we developed the certificates before we're developing this online master's. And the express idea now is that if you're taking those graduate certificates, you can transfer as many of those units over if you now want to get the online master's. So we hope that's a very smooth path for you. And as Stephanie said, up to 18 units. So that works very, very well. 18 units is actually, I believe, slightly more than any of the to complete the certificates. So therefore, you're in good shape. If you're in a certificate or want to take a certificate courses, and then ultimately you want to take the online master's, that transition should be seamless.
Someone has asked, I'm a mechanical engineer. Is this master's degree program potentially right for me?
Yeah, so we don't, so let's put it this way. We don't differentiate in the application process. So we have applications from chemistry students, mechanical engineers, physicists, etc. Now, with that said, many of these courses have prereqs. If you haven't, if you can't say that you've satisfied the prereq or prove to the faculty member who's teaching the course that you've satisfied the prereq, then of course you'd have to take the lower level courses that are required as prereqs for these courses, and some of them are online and some of them are not. So it's specific from that point of view. But from our point of view, we don't differentiate. So mechanical engineers will be part of our program.
Great. So someone has said, hello, I'm very interested in this master's degree program. So it's great. We already have some positive feedback. I have some questions, but the main one I think is this: do I have to be in the United States or have studied my bachelor's in the States to apply?
Well, that's certainly not true, because we admit PhDs and masters all the time from foreign institutions. So so the short answer is absolutely, we welcome your application, and it will be considered just like all of our graduate applications from overseas. There's a TOEFL requirement that's in addition to, no?
Is that the case? Okay.
Yeah, there's a TOEFL requirement that's in addition to the requirements that you saw, but apart from that, it'll be considered with all the other applications.
Great. Okay, I think we're pretty set with questions. Do you guys want to add anything else before I close?
I would just say, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or would like to just discuss, thematic areas that might be of interest or anything about the program. We're happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Yeah, I hope our email addresses are available on the website so that they can send questions online if they need to.
Sure.
We'll get them answered. It may not be instantaneous, but we'll get them answered.
Right, and we fully expect that questions will come in for the master's degree program, and both the Chemical Engineering Department and the Stanford Center for Professional Development are committed to answering your questions and making sure to put you on the right path should this be something you want to pursue.
That's right. And again, we're gearing up for this being our first class by March 19th. So please take a look at all the materials that are available on the website.
Right. Okay, great. So I want to just close by saying, thank you to Eric, Lisa, Beth, and Alex. I know Alex had to leave, but all for a wonderful presentation about this new online degree program and for answering all the questions that came through on the Q&A. A reminder, application deadline is March 19th. Check out the Chemical Engineering website for more information, and definitely check out, we have all the course pages on our SCBD website as well, so please check those out. We will be sending out the recording within a week to all those who registered for the webinar. And just thank you for taking the time to attend today. We really hope to see you in the future in this new exciting chemical engineering online degree program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.